Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. For the latest episode of Len Kabaczynski's Forgotten Movie Den, Len suggested that we watch a film from 1986 titled Hands of Steel. Now, if you're a fan of Red Letter Media, you probably remember they covered this movie in one of the Best of the Worst episodes, and I'm pretty sure that I saw this movie when I was younger. I don't really remember, or I didn't remember it when I started watching it, but there were parts of it that seemed very familiar. So I do think I watched this at some point, but I have not watched it in years. So I thought, okay, yeah, this will be fun. I'll be curious because, the movie has an interesting premise. I will read direct from what was written in IMDb, which I think is both hilarious and accurate. The synopsis here: a cyborg is programmed to kill a scientist who holds the fate of mankind in his hands. He fails and hides in a diner in a desert run by a woman who likes him. The people who sent him are after him, and so is the local arm wrestling champ. That is both accurate and hilarious, and that really is basically the entire premise of the movie. This is a low-budget film that is taking at least some elements of the Terminator, and there was another movie that people referenced that I think was actually a very good one, but I can't remember what it was. And essentially, we have a movie that is set in a desert, so you're mostly going to see people running around in the dirt and the dust, with some futuristic elements, but they are very lightly sprinkled. You'll see some buildings and some duct work on different cars that are being driven, and that basically passes for futuristic. There's never a year that's given. It honestly doesn't look like it isn't 1986. There's some shots in the beginning that look like they are quite clearly of New York City homeless population from that time. And outside of that, it's just a desert and what look like ordinary vehicles and helicopters. There's really very little to distinguish this thing as being the future, except for also the presence of acid rain, which in the 80s was one of these big things along with the ozone layer. Acid rain was something you always heard about. In fact, I'm trying to remember, I think at the beginning of Scrooge, the Bill Murray movie where they're playing the Scrooge promo, one of the big things is acid rain with a woman being burned by it and screaming into the camera. So if you remember, if you're old enough, you remember acid rain was one of these big environmental threats of the time. But other than that, it is, like I said, a low-budget action film where the lead, who I don't even remember his name, plays the cyborg character. The only person that I recognize two names from this movie. One, John Saxon, who's been in a million things. High-budget stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street, lower-budget stuff like Italian Giallos and movies like this. And then George Eastman, who's also a character actor who pops up in films like this. The lead actor, I think they mostly got him because he was in very good shape and could be a convincing cyborg with a lot of muscles. He's perfectly fine in the role. It doesn't require much of him. And the movie overall is a very entertaining 90 minutes. It will go by. There are some nice action set pieces. There are a couple car chases. We get a lot of helicopter action, which unfortunately did result in the death of one of the actors because there was a helicopter accident that killed the pilot and the actor. But you do see them flying around. And overall, this is exactly what you would expect from a low-budget action film of the time. There's nothing that's particularly special about it, but it is highly entertaining nonetheless. I actually think, and I'm going to suggest to Len, that a much better version of a movie in a similar vein is one I reviewed a while ago called Neon City with Michael Ironside. I feel like if this movie had had a little more money allocated to it or a little bit more creativity in terms of the ruined future aesthetic, that it would be something like Neon City. So I feel like this movie, while fun, it's a fun movie. It's got a great soundtrack that sounds like a Hong Kong action film to me every time I hear it. When it popped up in the movie, I kept thinking, oh, this reminds me of like a Cynthia Rothrock or a Hong Kong action film from the early 80s, but it's in this science fiction action film. But the movie is, as I said, a fun watch. You can watch it on YouTube for free. It's on Tubi. That's where I watched it, was on Tubi. It is a perfectly entertaining 90 minutes, especially if you like this type of genre stuff. It's a good time. Like I said, the only thing I got to the end of it, and probably only because I had seen Neon City, there's ways this could have been just a little bit better. And I wish they had, and it probably was budgetary, I wish they'd had just a little more money to do a couple of more things in a more fun way. But as it is, again, if you're a fan of this type of film, and if you're watching the Forgotten Movie Den and you're listening to these types of reviews like Neon City and this type of stuff, you probably are, then you're going to have a good time with it. Do I think it's one of the best examples of the genre? No, it falls a little bit short, but is it a good time? Is it a fun 90 minutes? It absolutely is. So again, the year is 1986. The film is Hands of Steel, free to watch in lots of places. It's a fun 90 minutes, so go have a good time with it. Later.